of what you see. And we do have 3 speakers in the session. This session is about new industries and new employment. So it's kind of like a positive mirroring of the previous discussion, or hopefully positive. And so we will have first the mayor from the city of Bottrop, Bernd Tischler, who's joining us via Zoom because of the pandemic. And he has already his slides up, and we're very grateful that he is joining us. It's of course challenging with the time difference, but we can talk to him now. He will not be able to join us in the panel at the end, unfortunately. So we'll have to ask all the questions we have now. And we'll start with Bernd Tischler. I'm going to introduce him very briefly. He was elected first as mayor of Bottrop in 2009, and then has been re-elected in 2014 and 2019. And he's also heading the Ruhr Regional Planning Association, and actually has been working in the planning department before in the city of Bottrop since 1989. So is a true expert. His passion, we will see more about this now. And please enjoy. And Mayor Tischler, thank you so much for joining us, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me here today and give me the opportunity to present our Innovation City project that we are implementing in Bottrop. At the beginning of the session, you spoke about the wonderful weather in Arizona. I'm a little bit envious. In my hometown, Bottrop, we'll start tomorrow with our Christmas market. The temperatures are about 0 degrees at night, but the days are quite sunny with up to 11 degrees. I prepared several slides to show you our project. Here you can see Bottrop in the state of North Rhine-Westphalia. And our structural dates are on this slide. Bottrop has a history of over 160 years of coal mining. Up to 4,000 miners worked in the city's industry. Nowadays, a few hundred are left. The end of the era of coal mining meant great changes for Bottrop and also raised a number of concerns and fears. However, we prepared ourselves well for these changes. We thought about our strength, which clearly lie in the field of energy. First, in former times, it was the old energy, the coal. Today, new technologies and topics like energy efficiency. In 2010, we made these topics and issues to our new general principles of the development of the city, and started the way of transforming the last German coal mining city into the energy efficient innovation city. And I want to speak about this transition. Already today, we can see the impact of climate change through floods and storms in Europe. And during the drought in 2018, we enlisted the city's fire brigade to water trees along the roads. This slide shows German figures, but it's quite the same in the United States. Nearly about 40% of CO2 emissions are emitted by existing buildings. So if you want to reduce these emissions, you have to do something about the existing houses and buildings in your cities. To only rely on new build and energy efficient houses would take too long, and time is what we do not have. So we have to deal with the existing building stock if we want to reduce CO2 emissions of a city in a remarkable amount. This is where the Innovation City project takes action at the already existing buildings and infrastructure. Our target is to reduce 50% of our CO2 emissions within 10 years. We do not only talk about the reductions of emissions. Our target is twofolded. We want blue skies, meaning reduction of the CO2 emissions, and we are also working for a green city, meaning the tangible improvement of quality of living. Both targets are part of our climate-friendly urban renewal process, and therefore we care about the following fields of action: living, working, energy, mobility, and the city at all. In addition to technical innovation, we learned that, as I call it, process innovation is crucial and important. So the question is not just what is technically possible, but also how can we implement it. And a good example for process innovation, we found out that these kind of roundtable discussions were very successful in Bottrop, especially the fact that all relevant actors come together on equal terms is important and facilitates the discussions. We have written a kind of, you can say a kind of blueprint to organize the transformation process. This blueprint is very well known in Germany, and it's even easily transferable to other cities. It takes into account technical innovations, but also this kind of process innovation. And another very, very important part has been the involvement of the citizens. This sort of civic participation is, in my opinion, the key element of the overall transformation process of the Innovation City here in Bottrop. And the slide shows the kind of working together from science, city, and industry in the action field of our city. Some basic information, again, with the element of the civic participation in mind. We launched a broad information campaign with meetings, presentations, and consulting offerings. We organized presentations in schools during with the goals of Innovation City were explained to the young people, the pupils. All these events were well received by the people in Bottrop. And as I told you, our target was to reduce 50% CO2 in only 10 years from 2010 until 2020. Of course, we started out with a master plan that especially focused on local aspects. And based on this master plan, we developed more than 300 different projects in areas such as energy efficiency, climate protection, but also in urban development. Let me show you just a few examples. For example, our existing buildings were modernized in such a way that they produce more energy than they consume. These houses also serve as a display and test objects for the whole region. Or another example, our digital system, which offers easy access to relevant information on energy efficiency and, of course, funding options for our citizens. So we can stay at home, take your computer, click on your house, and you can test how energy efficiency measures are working in your house, and how you can get funding, and how you can get help by the city. Bottrop is the leading city in North Rhine-Westphalia regarding the photovoltaic capacity per capita. And we have developed a system of subsidies depending on the achieved reduction of CO2. We subsidized up to 25% of private investments in energy efficiency. And we found out that €1 public funding creates nearly €8 private investment, which is very remarkable. And through this intensive public relations work, but also because of the subsidies, we have achieved a continuously high modernization rate of the existing building stocks in the city. That rate is 3 times above the national average. And these achievements have also generated a lot of growth in our labor market. We were able to create new jobs and to preserve existing ones. And we gained new companies in the city because of our Innovation City theme. This slide shows the difference in CO2 emissions in the national level for the Federal Republic of Germany, the federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia, and the Innovation City in Bottrop. And notice, please, the remarkable difference in reduction. This clearly shows, again, the effectiveness and the impact of the measures we implemented in our Bottrop blueprint. Only a few more examples of campaigns we launched over time. For example, energy efficiency, energy saving measures, photovoltaics, or roof greening, and improving the green situation of the city. A project like Innovation City needs financial backing, of course, in order to be implemented. And as you can see, the majority of investments in relations to Innovation City were private investments. The remaining part consisted of public investments. You see 70% of the 732 million euros were private investments and 30% public investments. I consider our successful information campaign for the citizens has been a huge part of the motivation and which has led the people to engage in the project and to take action and to be part of this new development of the city. My last slide is this one. We have a joint effort of industry, science, and politics in the region and in the town. We have a strong backing by the Bottrop citizens. We have a good progress and tangible results, an economic success, and of course a new vision for Bottrop beyond the time of coal mining. And we are an open project, so feel free to contact me and be part of our thoughts. And now that we have reached our targets as an innovation city in terms of CO2 reduction, we want to continue our successful journey as a city and become climate neutral by the year 2035. I know this is a big challenge for us as the city again. However, we have proven that we can set ourselves ambitious goals and achieve them. And I look forward to working on this new campaign. Remember the dire floods in some western parts of Germany this summer, which have shown us once again how powerful and devastating climate change is. So I'm convinced we must continue and intensify all our efforts in order to save our cities and, yeah, at least our planet. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to if there are any questions. I'm ready to.
Thank you very much, Mayor Tischler. And also thank you for expanding on how funding was made possible and the leverage of the funding. We do have a question on this on Zoom. One question came in, and it was specifically what you mean when you say public funding. Did it come from taxpayers, or I could imagine ratepayers, or what were the sources of this general budget? How was it financed, these measures, both for the city and the federal money? If you can say this maybe in a very briefly and for lay audiences.
Of course. Yeah, the funding money came from the state of Northern Westphalia because the government in Northern Westphalia wants to learn how does it work if public money comes into the city. And
oh, Herr Tischler, Herr Tischler, ich habe Sie aus Versehen stumm geschaltet. Herr Tischler, wenn Sie noch mal den letzten Satz, da bin ich auf den falschen Knopf. Ja, entschuldigen Sie. Ja?
Okay. Again, the money came from the Northern Westphalia state, and the state, the government wanted to learn how does it work if they give public tax-paid, of course, money into a town, and how can we implement the measures of energy efficiency with the help of funding, which was very successful. We organized a kind of labor intensive working space in Bottrop, and I heard that the new German government, which is now forming in Berlin, is thinking about the Bottrop way as well, to reach CO2 emission reduction in the whole country in Germany. So the blueprint Bottrop from the last 10 years, is working, even in the national scene.
That's very good, and it's good to hear such good news. Do we have another follow-up or understanding question in the room right away? 3, 2, 1. Otherwise, as I said, Lord Mayor Tischler is not available in the panel later. but we might have 1 or 2 minutes at the end of the session, optimistic thinking, but maybe not. Let's move on. Thank you very much, Bernd Tischler, again.
You're welcome.
Feel free to stay on for this session and as long as you can. I would like to ask our next speaker up to the podium. Shade Shutters, your background is very impressive. You started in finance, then did a PhD in biology, just like that. And now you work on urban sustainability. And now you work on urban sustainability or system sustainability and developing new tools, new ways. And I know you have one slide. I'm going to bring this up in a second. It's very easy because it's just one, so we don't have to worry about. Wonderful, wonderful. And this microphone, you can attach it to you if you want to walk around.
Okay.
Or just hold it gently.
Oh, fine.
Either way is good. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, everyone, for having me. I suppose I'm a bit of the oddball here because I direct something called the Laboratory for Regional Dynamics and Development here at ASU, but I work primarily on the coal transition in Germany. So this event in particular is really exciting for me because it's bringing together my two worlds. I expected this was more of a panel type thing, so I didn't actually prepare a presentation. I just came ready to share some thoughts with you, and I'll actually do that rather quickly because for me, the real benefit is the conversation that we have at the end of our session. So I'll just share some thoughts with you and experiences from working in this area. The first is that as you move up in levels of government, you tend to lose sight of what's happening down in the weeds at the local area. And so by the time you get to the top level, let's say the federal government of Germany, it's easy to make a decision that looks good for all of society. It's easy to say in 50 years, Germany as a whole or the US as a whole will be better thanks to this energy transition. But it's also easy to lose sight of the fact that there are winners and there are also a lot of losers in that transition, especially in the short term. And if we lose sight of that, we also forget to take care of those losers to the best of our ability. And so that's where I really come in. The work that I do is addressing those issues down at the local level that might have been overlooked by what is otherwise a really nice high-level policy. So some of the issues that I deal with at the local level have to deal with the loss of industry structure and what that devastating effect can be locally. It's not to say that like the government of Germany didn't take into account that this would impact people and that there would be losers, but it doesn't. Sometimes those solutions they have weren't well thought out, or they're not placed in the context of local communities. And that's why I was so happy to hear Mayor Tischler say that community engagement was the key, because that's really the part that a high-level government agency can't do. They can't just embed themselves with every small town and find out what their needs are or their expectations. There needs to be a process for that to happen locally. So the work of my lab is to come into those situations and try to do a couple things. First off, are there decision tools we can put in place to minimize the impact of a transition or a disruption to the economy? That's sort of the triage. And some people are happy. That's all they want. Just stop the bleeding. Let's get people in jobs, butts in seats. What I'm more interested in, though, is using that disruption as an opportunity. And a lot of times in the dark days, it doesn't seem like it's an opportunity, but trust me, when things are broken, that is a chance to build back better and do things differently. Now that presents a new problem. That gets your creative juices flowing. You're thinking about all sorts of visions of the future. One thing I try to do with stakeholders at that point, though, is is bring in a dose of reality. I hate to be that guy in the room that says, well, okay, slow down. These are incredible ideas. They're all over the place. 90% of those are not going to be possible. You don't want to hear that, but let's sit down and really carefully look at your labor structure, the industries you have here, the skills of your workforce, and let's figure out what is possible. And if there's something just a little bit beyond that realm, well, let's look at what skills are missing in your community so that we can tailor workforce training programs to meet your vision. And I could go on and on about case studies where small towns were devastated by changes in technology, and they got some money, and they, for instance, they built a biotech campus because that's hot. That, you know, that's seems to be what's successful in Boston and Palo Alto and wherever else. So that's what we have to do, without realizing they absolutely had no capacity to succeed in that. So the final thing I try to do with these communities is, yes, there's a lot of money out there and they're probably going to tap into it. But if you're not careful, that investment can be wasted. You can build a plant, you can do all sorts of training, all sorts of infrastructure improvement that have no long-term viability. So that's sort of where I work. I'm really interested in how Germany is now redirecting their energy. So they had some first-term solutions, which was, let's offer retraining, let's offer a lot of money. And the response back was, we don't want to do that. You know, we're coal miners. I don't want to be a data scientist. I don't want to start over when I'm 60. I don't want to move to another part of Germany either. My family's been here 500 years. And so instead of seeing a positive impact, they saw things in the Lausitz region, like the rise of right-wing political parties, extremists, the AfD political party winning local elections. And so that's where I started to work with the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy, because they were really caught off guard. They thought, we've got a great plan in place, we've got funding, but they just didn't understand the local context of what was going to happen in an energy transition. And so I think we have an incredible opportunity in this country to learn from what's happened in Germany. They're far ahead of us, I think. And I hope we'll continue to work together closely. And do you want me to go ahead and bring Ginger up?
Oh, I can, yeah, if you want to take a question.
Oh, I'm happy to take questions now or wait till the end if you'd rather.
Either way is good. I can.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I got really inspired by Bottrop.
I did too.
I want to ask you, how can we make Tempe or Phoenix an innovation city?
Well, I think we should have Mayor Tischler come here and share his experience with us. I think one of the obstacles in the US that is not so prevalent in Europe is the competition between cities. There's less impetus in the US, especially out in the Wild West here, for cities to work together for a common cause. And I've struggled with this issue in Phoenix for 20 years. There's virtually 32 municipalities in the Phoenix region. Each one has a mayor that's elected to do what's best for that city, not what's best for Metro Phoenix. That is a tough problem to overcome. So I think we start with some sort of coordinating body, and we get cities like Tempe to get on board, because the solutions that are for Tempe aren't just for Tempe. The labor force in Tempe is not even 50% of it is located in the city. It's in something called a commute shed. The labor force that work on the industries here come from 20, 30 other cities besides just Tempe. So it's really hard to craft a solution for Tempe that doesn't include all the other cities around it as partners. And the same for our partner cities. There's a lot of people that live in Tempe that work in other cities. So I think that's stage one. Forget this idea of working just on your city. We have to form some sort of regional planning, coordinating agency beyond just things like Maricopa Association of Governments, which does an awesome job of coordinating statistical collection, or GPEC, Greater Phoenix Economic Council, which does an amazing job of attracting industries to the valley. Those are good starts, but I think something much more comprehensive and integrated is going to be necessary for that to happen. I don't know if that's answering your question, Robert.
Let's get started.
That,
Get the mayor to come.
I think this is a very interesting concept, because in Germany there are these Regionalverbund, the regional associations, and they're sub-state level but above the municipal level, and they're kind of unique in a way how they work. And they don't have a lot of.
Max, can I add something from Bottrop again?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Yes. I would like to add that our blueprint is like a toolbox. We know how things work to change a city into an innovation city and to a city of energy efficiency. But the main point is you have to win the population. The people have to say, yes, we want to change the city in this direction. We want to step in the boat, and we want to row in the same direction. This is the Kunst, the art to organize the process. If you organize these ideas, it's quite easy to organize the process, I'm convinced. And the Bottrop example shows that it can work.
Well, that's maybe a good segue to lead over to our next speaker. Not that you have to represent the city of Phoenix proper, but you have insights or inside knowledge. Do you need a little space? Yeah, that's fine. I'll just hand you the microphone and then you can walk around. So Ginger Sykes Torres, or Torres, I hope I say it correctly. And now it's going to get even more difficult. So you're Dine and Todichin.
I could do that part.
Yeah, so, you do that part.
I'm Navajo Nation.
Here's the microphone. Do you want to attach it or just hold it? Either way.
Oh yeah. Do you want me to just introduce myself? Yeah. Okay. So hi everybody. My name is Ginger Sykes Torres. I am Navajo Dene. I am Todachitni, born for the Bilagana. Those are my clans. I am a consultant on environmental policy, climate resilience, and renewable energy. And my initial, I guess, my background in this field is I graduated from Stanford University about 20 years ago, and in the field of environmental science and policy. It's called Earth System. So I really wanted to work on solving climate change at the global scale. My first job was working for a US corporation doing environmental planning. And so for the last number of years, I've worked on reducing environmental impacts from development projects. Many of them are involving energy projects, transmission lines, energy planning. In the last 10 years, I've worked on a lot of renewable energy. So making sure that those renewable energy, large scale, utility scale projects are being sited on lands that are environmentally appropriate areas. I've done this as a consultant. I've also worked directly for Pacific Gas and Electric Company, doing climate resilience work, making sure all the business lines within the corporation were aware of and factoring in the impacts of climate change into their utility planning operations. But also I also worked with the statewide federal and state agencies in California to plan where California wanted to direct investments in renewable energy. So making sure, helping the state of California and the Department of Interior plan renewable energy zones in California. So this is an issue that is like near and dear to my heart. I got into it because I really wanted to help solve it, but I've been doing it on like kind of, I feel like a very like piece by piece scale as I've been going along. I've taken a number of years off from work in the last several years to raise my small children, but I have been serving a lot of time volunteering with my community and using my skills to better my city. And so I serve on our city's Environmental Quality and Sustainability Commission, where I'm the vice chair, and I also lead a whole subcommittee for our city on urban heat island trees and shade. So I've been really trying to utilize all of my local planning experience to help our city come up with innovative policies and programs that will help our city not only be more resilient in the coming years with the onset of climate change effects, but also kind of address the issue at heart, which is reducing our reliance on carbon and fossil fuels. So I have some ideas about how investing in good environmental policy can result in strong economies and jobs here in our city and state, and also a little bit at the national level. Our local, state, and national policymakers all have a role to play in facilitating clean energy investments in Arizona, and also ensuring that communities can have access to and benefits from those investments, and mainly which are creating jobs for all of our people. Local policymakers such as city councils, mayors, tribal elected officials, they're all in the position to directly affect the day-to-day lives of their constituents. And they play a key role in laying the groundwork for creating markets that will facilitate clean energy industries. And so they can create laws and policies and initiatives that spur economic innovation to address rising heat, lower carbon transport, or raise, facilitate more opportunities for low carbon transportation, and also increase the adoption of energy efficiency programs. As part of my role on the Environmental Quality and Sustainability Commission for Phoenix, I recommend these types of strategies to the City Council to consider. And as a result of my work this year, for one example is our city of Phoenix was the first city in the nation to operate a publicly funded heat officer. So this heat officer will be key to leading innovation in this area. So they will work on examples of adopting new technologies such as cool pavement, applying policies such as increasing cool rooftops, and programs like cool corridors that are in theory walking paths that provide respite from the heat and elements that the average person would experience if they had to get from point A to point B outside in our environment. They'll also be working on region-wide planning. So this is kind of getting at what Shade was mentioning, that there are barriers right now, and all cities are kind of operating in little silos, but in order to really achieve significant results on the region-wide level, we need more regional-wide cooperation, not only on heat, but all types of resilience measures. There is a huge statewide gap, as I'm sure you are all aware, of lack of environmental leadership at the state level. And so cities have really taken up this initiative to be the change leaders and be on the forefront of coming up with these innovative ideas. But that doesn't mean that we should stop pushing for that statewide participation if we all can. So I really want to stress that our cities need to, with all of the investments in local citywide and I guess economy, so they could be circular economies, they could be adapting more EV infrastructure within the city. That is all kind of new and at the forefront of our industries today. But these will help our cities not only adapt and become more resilient to our changing climate, but they will also help us reduce our reliance on the critical energy resources, because the overall goal with innovation should be that it reduces the need for all of those resources and also conserves those resources at the same time. So we're not needing to use as much energy. And so good environmental policy investments in clean energy, I also want to highlight they're essential in creating a strong statewide long-term economic future. Our state policymakers can steer this and pass laws and resources that protect our land and waters and our communities on a very large scale. And this will have the effect of creating jobs and also supporting communities in their transition from their reliance on fossil fuels to clean technologies, and ensure, other compliance with decommissioning plans like we heard from Nicole Horseherder earlier today. These investments are key to our state's long-term competitiveness. So companies are increasingly looking at sustainability factors when they're considering investing in moving their companies here to Arizona. And many companies may seek assurances from cities and states where they can locate that they're, that all of these clean energy climates, and we have the strong sustainability goals here in our state and our cities. And so the more and robust corporate investments we can see here in Arizona will be tied to jobs. And so those jobs I'm speaking of are mostly in urban areas. I haven't gotten to the rural areas, but I just wanted to set the tone that like a very strong and robust statewide environmental policy is going to be very good for our state, our business environment in the long term. Arizona has a lot of energy resources and opportunities for innovation, rapidly growing technologies such as a lot of entrepreneurs here. We have clean energy, renewable energy, nuclear energy, growing solar, energy storage, innovation areas. These are all opportunities that our state has to look to in terms of job creation or innovation. Let's see. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Navajo Nation. So I am Navajo. I was born in Tuba City and I grew up here in the Valley. My father worked for Salt River Project for a number of years, and I have many family members that have relied on the high-paying jobs that were created with the Black Mesa and Kayenta mines on the Navajo Nation. And so I do see, I'm a direct result of their investments and their utilization of, Navajo communities. But that doesn't mean that I think that it has to go, on that route forever. I think there are real opportunities to having economy and a healthy economy on Navajo Nation that is not dependent on those fossil fuel resources. However, in my view, a lot of the need for economic development on Navajo is really based on the need to, what Chris was talking about earlier is the infrastructure is just not there right now. In this day and age, it's hard to attract local businesses and entrepreneurs back to the reservation without those investments, without the access to electricity, without clean water, or without water supply. Not only are 30% of the Navajo Nation houses without electricity, 30% are also without running water to their house. They have to haul their own water. And then without access to internet. I can't go hardly anywhere without internet before I start to freak out. And so it's hard to operate a business if you don't have those like very basic connections to the rest of the world in this day and age. And so the transition, I feel like, should be transition off of fossil fuels isn't just transitioning to, building. It does include building utility scale energy infrastructure, but it also needs to be a transition where you're looking at the core issues that are going on Navajo and really trying to build up those communities that those core issues have not been addressed for the last 40 years. Like there's no reason why, 30% of the homes on Navajo should not have electricity right now. Like that's just a lack of investment that's happened over many, many years of time. And so that's the type of thing that needs to be addressed in this transition. It needs to look more broadly. It's not just a transition from coal to another form of energy. It needs to be, you know, looking at the whole heart of the economic plan for Navajo. And so I think those resources can be found, and I think that will take a lot of innovation. And so that's it for me, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Ginger. That was really interesting to see also your connection to the whole, from your family history to your present day, and how now you want to go into a new future or lead the whole region into a new future, not just you. I find it very fascinating because I'm going to borrow the microphone just for, yeah, we should have had one more maybe, but just, you know, because we all don't know what this future will be, but we can have ideas about it and talking about it. And Chris, you mentioned this at the very beginning, this visioning exercises. I mean, that's of course not the only thing, and alone not enough, but these ideas, developing ideas about the future, positive ideas, I think is very, very crucial. So I think this is so important, all these, you know, ideas coming together, people coming together, just like here. This is important, and I'm glad that we have people on Zoom joining us as well, even from Arizona. I know friend is dialing in from, I think from Tucson, and so we have people not doing the trip because of pandemic and traffic and other reasons, but technology allows them to be a little bit in the room. We're over time, but we can take 2 or 3 questions, definitely. Yeah, you can add. And if you have a question, raise your hand and we'll take your question.
Yeah, and what Max just said just reminded me that a lot of the work that I do is really trying to make sure that the resources in all these conversations are really going to the most vulnerable communities first. So I would consider Navajo Nation a very vulnerable community. But when we're talking about the effects of climate, there's a lot of different types of vulnerable community, right? In Phoenix, there's, you know, heat vulnerable communities. There's portions of our valley that experience the impacts of heat way more severely than other locations, you know, 10 miles away. And so when we're thinking about all of these investments, we need to be thinking about with climate change, which communities are going to experience which types of impacts, and really try to address those impacts in those vulnerable communities first.
Great. I saw a hand over there.
This is for all the speakers. I was curious to know which specific stakeholders have given you the most resistance, and what specific strategies you use to overcome that resistance.
Wants to go first? Mayor Tischler, do you want to start?
I couldn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So the question, which stakeholders, also welche Gruppen haben am meisten Widerstand gegeben und wie haben Sie das überwunden?
Yeah, in the beginning of the process, the local Handwerker, the local craftsmen were in the skeptical position, but in the ongoing process of realizing measures in different parts of the city, they saw, there are new jobs which came up, which new companies came into the town, and step by step, combined with the intensive public relation to the project, and in the intensive implementation of the talks to the pupils and to the schools, there was a kind of mood of changement into the came into the city, and the people said, okay, let's try this new way. We start to work as I told you, in former times, coal mining work, and now we will start working in energy efficiency and climate protection. And this transition is wonderful, because it's a wonderful story of that the last German coal mining city is now a model city for innovation and for energy efficiency and climate protection.
Oh, can you hear me? Okay. So luckily my city, Phoenix, has a mayor that is very supportive of all types of, reduction of fossil fuels, all types of innovation with regard to climate preparedness. And so I really feel like maybe the lack of stakeholder participation is at the state level. And so I really feel like we need a statewide government that has this as a priority, that really believes in the causes of climate change and wants to really take meaningful action to address it within our communities. And so for me, that's the answer, is that, the top of the state government needs to take this as an issue.
One last. I guess my answer to that question is, it's not one group of stakeholders that are typically the opposition, but it's a type of person. It's a type of person that has substantial power before a transition, that realizes they're going to lose that, or it's going to be diluted, and they don't want that to happen. And so they will fight against it. And fortunately, it's rather easy to identify who those people might be before you go into a situation. And so you can mitigate it by just knowing. But I think the best response to those types of individuals is by including as many other people as possible, being completely transparent and engaging the community as widely as possible, so that those obstacles sort of become drowned out in the bigger picture. It still doesn't make it easy, because you're trying to overcome a power structure that may have been in place for generations, and there will be conflict. But that's generally the best approach that I think is possible, is to be as open and as broadly accepting of individuals as possible in your solution.
Great general approach anyway, so very good, very good. Thank you all three so much for this very inspiring session. Thank you, Mayor Tischler. Thank you to Bottrop. What time is it now in Bottrop? So we couldn't hear you, but it's late.
7:30, yeah, genau.
7:30. Well,
Yeah.
It's late, but it's not midnight. So thank you so much, though. I know you have another meeting, a city meeting now, a budget meeting. So it's also important. So we really appreciate that you took time to join us today here and to share some of your experiences. Thank you also, Ginger. Thank you, Shade, for sharing your experiences in your work. We want to end this session here. We will take a quick break to stretch the legs and get some more coffee or water, and then start again in 5 minutes. Thank you. Thank you.